Story number one is the one I always think of first when people ask me about grizzly bears on the podcast, because it is such a perfect example of how fast things can go bad even when you do almost everything right. This is Todd Orr's story, the guy who got hit by the same grizzly bear twice in one morning and still hiked himself out. When you sit across from him, he just looks like a regular Montana dude. But you listen to this, and you realize you are talking to somebody who has literally been through a real-life monster movie and stayed calm enough to survive it. He is scouting elk in southwest Montana, one of those picture-perfect valleys. Big open meadows, dark timber on the slopes, a creek running through, frost on the grass, breath showing up in the air with every exhale. It is early, first light kind of early, and he is doing everything you are supposed to do in bear country. He has bear spray on his belt, he is calling out loud regularly, hey bear, so that nothing gets surprised by him. He is watching the wind. He knows this is grizzly territory, and he respects that. He comes into a little meadow with willows and brush on the far side. The sun is just starting to touch the tops of the trees. There is that quiet you get in the mountains where even your footsteps sound too loud. He calls out again. Hey bear. Nothing answers, no movement. He takes a few more steps, scanning. Then he sees them. A sow grizzly and two cubs, down in the brush at the far end of the meadow. They are not that far away, close enough that you are in the "this could go bad" zone immediately. The sow looks up, sees him, and for a moment it looks like it might go the good way. She hustles the cubs away, turning her body to shield them, trotting them toward the trees. That is what you want. She leaves, he backs off, everybody goes home. But she stops, she turns back, something changes, maybe the wind shifts. Maybe she decides this upright thing is too close to her babies. Her whole body language flips from retreat to attack, and then she comes. Todd says once she committed, it was like a truck coming downhill with no brakes. She explodes out of the brush in a full run. Ears back, head low, shoulders rolling under her hide. The distance between them disappears in seconds. He gets the bear spray out, aims, and lays down a solid orange cloud right between them as she closes. The spray hits her in the face, burning eyes and nose. But instead of turning her around, it just turns her into a blind, enraged missile. She plows straight through the cloud and straight into him. He said the impact felt like getting hit by a car. 1 second he is standing, the next he is on his back with 600 pounds of grizzly on top of him. She starts doing exactly what you never want a grizzly to do, biting and clawing with real intent. He knew from all the bear training stuff you protect your neck and head. So he curls up, hands laced behind his neck, elbows in tight, trying to present his back and arms instead of his throat and face. It is the most unnatural thing in the world. Every cell in your body wants to push her away, hit her, fight back. Survival in that moment means playing dead while something tears chunks out of you. Her teeth go through his forearm, through muscle, down to bone. He hears and feels crunching. She bites his shoulder, rakes his back with claws that might as well be sharpened steel hooks. He stays as still as he can, trying not to scream, trying not to kick, just hoping that at some point she decides he is no longer a threat to those cubs. After what feels like forever and is probably less than a minute, she stops. He can feel her weight shift. She stands over him, huffing, sniffing, then she moves off. He keeps lying there, forcing himself not to move, listening until the crashing in the brush fades. Only then does he open his eyes and uncurl very slowly. He is ripped up. His arm is mangled, his head is bleeding, his jacket is shredded, but he is alive. Most people at that point would just lie there and hope somebody comes along. He knows nobody is coming, so he does what Montana people do. He gets up and starts hiking back down the trail toward his truck, one step at a time, bleeding into the dirt, and then the story gets even crazier. Because on the way out, he walks right back into her again. He is moving as fast as he can, calling out again like they tell you. Hey bear, hey bear. His voice is shaky now, but he is still doing it. He turns a corner in the trail, and there she is, the same sow, same cubs. This time she does not hesitate at all. She knows exactly who he is, and she comes for him like she is finishing a job. He does not even get the spray up in time. She is on him instantly. Another hit, another slam to the ground, more teeth and claws. She bites through his arm again, through his scalp, through his shoulder. At one point, she has his head in her mouth. He says he heard his skull crack. Think about that. You are lying on the ground listening to the sound of your own skull cracking inside a bear's jaws. He keeps his hands behind his neck, keeps his elbows up, keeps protecting his throat. He plays dead again while everything in his mind is screaming that this is it. Finally, she lets go. stands over him, paws on either side of his body, sniffs him like she is checking her work. Then she walks off for real this time, taking the cubs with her. He lies there, waiting, bleeding. Then he gets up again and hikes the rest of the way out, half of his scalp hanging, his arm shredded, his back torn to ribbons. Not only does he make it back to the truck, he films that famous video on his phone where he calmly explains that he's been mauled twice and is heading for the hospital. You can see blood on his face while he talks. Sitting with him in the studio, what really hits you is how calm he was in the middle of that. He had seconds to decide how to react, and stuck with what he had learned, even while being chewed on. That is a level of composure most people never have to test. If you are lying there listening, imagine that valley, that quiet morning, and then imagine the sound of 400 kilograms of bear crashing through willows straight at you. That is how fast life can change. Now let's talk about story number 2, and this one is from the coastal side, where the grizzly cousins get even bigger. This is one of the Steve Rinella brown bear stories, but brown bear or inland grizzly, it is the same animal in your nightmares. Same claws, same teeth, same idea that you were somewhere near the top of the food chain until one of these things walks into view. Steve is on one of those brutal Alaska hunts, one of the islands where the biggest brown bears in the world live. Think steep, wet terrain, everything slick, everything either trying to stab you or trip you. Spruce trees, alder thickets, moss that swallows your boots. The weather is a rotation of rain, mist, and sideways rain. He and a buddy have shot a bull elk that is way back in that mess. The kind of bull that takes hours just to reach, never mind butcher and pack. They finally get to it, and they start that serious work. Knives out, steam rising from the open carcass into cold air. They are cutting quarters, talking in low voices, in that focus zone where your whole world is steel on bone, meat on tarp. They are not idiots. They know every time they open up an animal in that country, a brown bear somewhere gets a whiff of it. They keep looking up, scanning the brush. The wind is in their faces, which is good until it is not. At some point, the air does that subtle flip, a tiny swirl. The smell changes. You know when somebody walks into a room and they have a strong cologne and the whole vibe shifts? It is like that, but the cologne is wild dog and dead salmon and wet fur. They both smell it at the same time. Bear. Steve looks up and there, half hidden in the alders, is a bear that looks like a walking boulder. Huge back hump, tiny ears on a massive head, fur matted from rain and mud. It is close enough that you see individual guard hairs on its shoulders. It is standing there, nostrils working, eyes locked onto the elk and the two humans standing in its future pantry. For a few seconds, nobody moves. The whole valley breathes in and holds. The bear starts walking in. Not sprinting, not charging, just this slow, direct line. Nothing in its body language says, "I am scared of you." Everything says, "That is my meat, why are you standing on it?" They shout, wave their arms, try to do the make yourself big thing. The bear keeps coming, one deliberate step at a time. It huffs, that deep, explosive exhale that carries across the ravine. The space between them shrinks to a distance where you could throw a rock and hit it. They have rifles leaning against a nearby tree because they needed both hands for butchering. That tree suddenly looks 20 miles away. They slide sideways toward the guns, never turning their backs, never taking their eyes off the bear. The animal watches them, then looks at the elk, then back at them, like it is doing the math. Steve gets to his rifle, brings it up, and shouts again. The bear stops. Head swings side to side. It is still walking forward with its body even while the head is moving. That is the creepy part. The bear brain is processing, but the body is already committed. They do not want to shoot it. Nobody drives a boat all the way there to poach a brown bear over a carcass. They fire a warning shot into the dirt in front of it. The rifle blasts in that tight valley. Dirt jumps. The bear flinches, then circles. It does not run. It just slides sideways into heavier cover, then starts angling in again, like a linebacker trying to come at you from a better direction. This goes on for a few minutes that feel like hours. The bear probes, they yell, they fire another shot. It never fully commits to a straight charge, but it never fully leaves. Finally, they make the decision that is always painful for hunters. They back out and leave the meat. From a safe distance up on a ridge, they watch that bear walk straight in and take over. It does exactly what they knew it was going to do. Stands on the elk like a dragon on a pile of gold, tears into the rib cage with its teeth, pause at the quarters they had so neatly arranged. In minutes, the work they did is gone. It is a bear buffet now. Steve said that the feeling you get in that moment is a mix of anger, awe, and humility. You spend days finding that animal, hours getting to it, a huge chunk of your body's energy cutting and hauling. Then the landlord shows up, and the landlord weighs several hundred kilograms and has 5-inch claws. There is no debate session. No, we were here first, we did all the work. There is just, this is my valley, and I say this meat is mine. Talking to him about it, you realize that is what Grizzly Country really is. You are not a tourist, you are not the main character, you are just another thing walking around trying to get calories before winter. The bear is not evil, it is just better at being the local boss than you are. If you are drifting off as you listen, picture that scene. Wet moss, thick alders, steam rising from meat, and then a wall of fur stepping out of the brush like it has been summoned by the smell of blood and gunpowder. Now let's talk about story number 3, and this one is about a very different kind of almost that super thin line between a bluff charge and a funeral. This came from a bow hunter who spends his life in the mountains, calling elk with a mouth reed and hiking more before breakfast than most people do in a week. He was in here talking about one particular September morning that changed how he thinks about every patch of dark timber. He is in Montana, deep in one of those basins you only get to by climbing for hours in the dark. There is frost on every branch, his breath is clouding in headlamp light, and he is cow-calling, trying to get a bull to answer. The whole world is steep slopes, fir trees, and that feeling that every sound carries forever. He finally hears it. A bugle down the drainage, that long, haunted whistle that sends chills up your spine even when you are not supposed to be the prey. He moves closer, calling, setting up, moving again. The usual chess game between predator and prey, except there is a third player in that game that does not care about elk or archery tags. He slips into a little opening, a patch of moss and grass with thick brush walls all around it. Perfect ambush spot for elk, also perfect ambush spot for a bear. He thinks the bull is just over the rise, so he cow calls again and waits. Instead of a bugle, he hears brush explode below him. Heavy footsteps crashing. He thinks, here comes the bull hot. He gets ready, arrow knocked, heart pounding. Then a grizzly pops out, not an elk. Big hump, blonde face, ears laid back, eyes locked in. That is the exact wrong combination. You, a tight little opening, thick cover, and a sow with cubs who thinks you are between her and the only exit. She woofs, that deep chest sound that makes your spine feel brittle, and in that instant he knows she is not bluffing. She comes straight up the hill at him. She does not even think about drawing his bow. In that moment, a bow might as well be a pool noodle. He drops it, grabs the bear spray on his belt, and rips the safety off. She is closing the distance like gravity is pulling her. 1 second she is 15 meters away, the next she is 5. He plants his feet and sends the spray. A bright orange cloud fills the tiny clearing. It hits her square in the face just as she's about to roll over him. She plows into that burning mist, head swinging, claws tearing at the air. She stops so close that he can see foam on her lips, snot flying as she coughs and coughs, eyes squeezed shut. She snaps her jaws in the air, paws swiping, confused and furious. He backs up slowly, not turning his back on her, still squeezing the can. For a second, he thinks she's going to push through it and come anyway. You hear stories about that. Bears that do not care, that just push through pain. She swings her head, snorting, coughing, then turns and barrels past him, almost brushing his shoulder as she goes, heading back downhill toward the cubs. They crash off through the brush, making enough noise for a small car. Then, somehow, the quiet creeps back in. He is left standing there, hands shaking, a half-empty can of spray in one hand, his bow lying on the ground where he dropped it. He said the adrenaline dump was so hard that he had to sit down for a few minutes just to get control of his body again. His legs felt like rubber. His mouth was dry. His whole body was shivering, not from cold, but from that "you almost died" chemical wave. When he finally started hiking out, every stump looked like a bear. Every piece of shadow looked like a hump. He kept replaying that exact spot in his mind. If he had taken 2 more steps in before calling, if he had turned his back, if he had left the spray on his pack instead of on his belt. Tiny little details are the difference between getting knocked into the moss by a grizzly and telling the story later into a microphone. That is one of those encounters that shows you what bear spray really is. It is not a magic shield. It is something you have to get to, aim right, and use at the exact right moment while a giant animal is closing the distance trying to erase you. If you are listening to this while you are relaxing, imagine standing in a little green circle surrounded by brush, hearing what you think is a majestic elk running in, and instead getting a sow grizzly coming uphill with her whole body saying, "You messed up, human." Now let's talk about story number 4. And this one is about what happens when a wounded grizzly disappears into the thick stuff and you still have to go in after it. This is a guide story from a man who has spent more time in grizzly country than a lot of bears. He told me about a day in Alaska where everything he knew about bear behavior got tested in about 7 seconds. He is guiding a hunter on a grizzly hunt during the fall. They spot a bear out on a berry slope quartering away feeding. Big boar, thick neck, good hide. They watch for a while, make sure there are no cubs, no weird behavior. It looks like a clean situation. They get into position, check the wind, wait for a shot. The client puts a bullet in the bear, but it is not perfect. The boar hunches, spins, bites at its side, then does that horrible thing that wounded bears do. It runs for the darkest, thickest patch of cover on the mountain. In this case, a tangle of alders, willows, and head-high brush that looks like it was designed by someone who hates visibility. You are supposed to give a wounded bear time to die, but you also do not want it climbing into a hole and waiting for you. They sit for a while, watching, listening. No more movement up there, just the sound of wind and leaves. Finally, the guide looks at his hunter and says the sentence that makes your stomach tighten even just hearing it as a story. "We have to go in." They leave the client in a safer position and push into that tangle, 2 guides with big rifles, hearts thudding. It is one thing to walk through dense brush when you think there might be a moose. It is another when you know there is a bear in there somewhere that you have already hurt. The brush closes over their heads. Visibility goes from hundreds of meters to a couple of steps. Every time they push branches aside, leaves slap back into their faces. They are scanning for fur, for an ear, for any sign. The smell of crushed vegetation is strong, mixed now with the sweet, almost metallic smell of blood. They find first blood on leaves, a spray pattern that says the bullet hit something important. They follow it, slowly, very slowly. One man moves, the other covers, they swap. Their fingers are on the triggers, safety's off, barrels pointed into every possible gap. They come to a small depression, like a little bowl in the hillside. The blood trail leads straight into it and disappears. The guide feels every alarm bell in his mind start ringing. It is exactly the kind of place a wounded bear would crawl into and wait. He whispers to the other guide, "Stay tight. Eyes up." A low, gurgling moan from just ahead, followed by a sudden ripping sound as branches explode. The bear comes out of that bowl like a freight train. Dirt and leaves spray up behind it. It is on 3 legs, the 4th hanging weirdly, blood on its side, eyes wide and full of rage. It is not bluffing. It is doing the last thing it knows how to do, which is charge what hurt it. The distance between them is nothing. You can talk about shot placement and bullet choice all day in a warm room. In that moment, he has a running bear at less than 10 meters, and his body has to do what years of experience trained it to do. He shouldered that rifle and fired almost from the hip. The first shot hits the bear in the chest, turning it slightly, but it keeps coming. He racks another round, fires again. The blast is deafening in the enclosed brush. Ears ring, leaves shake, the whole little grove fills with smoke and fur and motion. The second shot breaks something important inside the bear. Momentum carries it forward, but the life is leaving. It stumbles, claws tearing furrows, then crashes at his feet so hard that it throws dirt onto his pants. He can smell its breath hot and thick, even as it gives a last kick. He steps back, heart hammering. The other guide is breathing hard, eyes huge, knuckles white on his own rifle. It is over. They are both shaking. The woods around them are quiet again, but now the quiet feels earned. When he told me that, he said the part that sticks with him is how tiny the window was. If he had hesitated, if his rifle had jammed, if he had tripped on a root, that bear would have made contact. And when something that powerful makes contact at that distance, it is not a wrestling match. It is a mauling. Guides like that run those mental drills all the time. They talk about distances, angles, backup shots, but most of them will never have to put all of that into practice with a wounded grizzly launching out of a brush bowl at their face. He did. That is why his story lives in that top tier of almost died bear encounters. If you are lying there listening, picture pushing into a thicket so dense that you cannot see the sky, knowing that somewhere ahead in that green wall is a huge animal that is hurting and angry. Then imagine the entire wall suddenly coming alive and charging. That is what those 7 seconds felt like for him. Now let's talk about story number 5, and this one is one of those quiet horror stories. No gun, no film crew, no client, just a guy running in the mountains for exercise, thinking about his heart rate and his split times, and then suddenly thinking about whether his skin is going to get peeled off by paws. The guest was one of those absolute animals of the endurance world, runs ultra marathons, hunts with a bow in the high country, does 7-hour hikes as a warm-up. He lives in grizzly country and knows all the lectures. Make noise, carry spray, pay attention. He follows the rules most days. This one time, he cut a corner. It is late summer, beautiful evening, golden light on the peaks, that kind of day that makes you forget anything bad can happen. He decides to get a hard run in on a trail that cuts through a patch of thick timber and then up into open alpine meadows. He grabs his shoes, a light pack, and, to his credit, a can of bear spray on his hip. He starts running and everything feels good. Heart pumping, lungs open, legs doing what they were built to do. Gravel crunches under his feet, the air smells like pine and dust and sun-baked dirt. He passes a couple of hikers down low, says hi, and then he is alone. As he climbs, the forest gets darker and denser. The trail swings through a long, shady section where the trees close in and the underbrush is lush. He knows this is the kind of place where bears like to be during the heat of the day, but his brain is in runner mode now. He is listening to his breathing, not to the woods. Coming around a corner, he cuts through a little dip with thick brush on one side and a downed log on the other. There is a blind spot just ahead where the trail bends. He is moving fast. Too fast for his senses to keep up. As he hits that bend, he almost steps on the back of a grizzly. The bear is standing in the trail, broadside, facing away, digging in some rotten log for grubs or ants. He was upwind, so it did not hear or smell him in time. He gets close enough that he can see the muscles under its hide moving with each swing of its shoulder. At the last second, the bear whirls around. One instant he is staring at dusty fur and a hump. The next he is face to face with a big bear at a distance he usually reserves for other people at a crowded party. Everything stops. Time stretches. They are both shocked. Then the bear does the most bear thing possible. It roars and comes at him. He spins to run, instantly realizing how pointless that is. A grizzly can cover those meters faster than his brain can say the words, "I am dead." His foot catches on a rock as he turns and he goes down hard. His hands smash into the dirt and gravel. His knees hit. The impact drives the air out of his lungs. He rolls onto his back just in time to see the bear closing, head low, claws out, teeth bared. He said that image is burned into his brain. A massive animal filling the entire world, coming in like a wave. In that instant, with no breath in his chest and no way to run, he goes for the only tool he has, the spray on his belt. His fingers find it out of pure training. He yanks it free, jams his thumb on the trigger, and sprays straight up as the bear looms over him. At that distance, it is like somebody throwing a handful of ground up hot peppers right into your eyes and lungs. The bear screams. Not a roar this time, a kind of strangled high-pitched sound of pain and shock. It rears up, swinging its head side to side, paws flailing. From his position on the ground, he keeps the spray going, painting the muzzle and chest. Everything burns. Some of that mist hits him too. His own eyes start watering, his throat seizes, but he does not let go of the trigger until the can sputters. The bear backs off a few steps, still coughing and shaking its head. For a horrible second, it looks like it might push through and come back in. Then it turns, runs off the trail, and crashes through the trees, breaking branches like kindling as it goes. He lies there on his back, gasping, eyes on fire, chest heaving. He listens until the crashing fades and the woods go quiet again. The forest looks the same, but he is not the same person who rounded that corner 30 seconds earlier. He rinses his face with the little water he has, waits until he can see a bit better, and then he does the smart thing. He walks back down. No more running. No victory sprint to the car. Just a slow, shaking walk, eyes scanning every shadow. Later, sitting in front of me, he said the part that stuck with him was how quickly he went from being the top mammal on the trail to being a half second from becoming a smear of blood and broken bones. No warning growl, no snapping twig in the distance. Just one bad blind corner and a bear that had as much right to be there as he did. That is 5 different times. Grizzlies almost deleted people who ended up sitting here telling me about it instead. We have had the double mauling, the meat-stealing coastal giant, the sow charge in the Elk Basin, the wounded bear in the Alder Bowl, and the runner who turned a corner into a wall of fur. When you are ready for part 2, we will pick up with story number 6 and keep going through more times grizzly bears almost punched a permanent hole in the guest list. Now let's talk about story number 6, and this one is from a guy whose whole job was to get as close as possible to wild animals with a camera and still go home in one piece. A wildlife photographer who spent seasons in places like Denali and Yellowstone, just living in a tent with long lenses pointed at mountains. When he was here, he told me that grizzly bears were always in the back of his mind, but there was one particular day where they moved right into the front and almost turned him into a footnote. He is in Alaska, camped a few miles off a park road, hiking solo up a broad valley to get shots of caribou and whatever else the mountain wants to show him. It is one of those big open glacial valleys, with a braided river running down the middle, low willow patches along the banks, and mountains rising on both sides like teeth. It is late afternoon, the light is beautiful, the wind is low. He is carrying a heavy pack and a monster lens on a tripod, and his mind is halfway between framing shots and thinking about what he is going to eat for dinner. He sees a small group of caribou on the far side of the valley, picking through some sparse plants. The wind is in his face, so they do not have his scent. He decides to move downwind and closer, using little rises in the terrain to hide his approach so he does not spook them. Classic wildlife photographer ninja mode. He drops down off a little ridge into a shallow cut in the valley floor, a sort of dry side channel that is now just gravel and scattered shrubs. The banks are a couple of meters high, which gives him good cover from the caribou. What he is not thinking about is that those same banks cut his view of everything else that might be using the valley. He is walking in that channel, focused on keeping quiet, when he notices the air smell different. It is hard to describe until you have smelled it, but everyone who has been around brown bears knows it. A mix of wet dog, turned earth, old fish, something wild and musky. He stops. The hairs on his arms stand up. Before he even has time to think, a grizzly stands up on the bank not far in front of him. 1 second there is just willow and rock. The next second there is a bear that looks like it was folded into the landscape and just unfolded itself. Big hump, silvered back, dark face. It has that look, like someone just turned on a light in its brain and now it is fully present. They are far too close, maybe 15 meters, maybe less. The bear had been walking along the bank, probably following the river, and he just happened to intersect its path at the worst possible moment. The wind, which was good for the caribou, was bad for this, because it blew his scent away from the bear until the very last second. The bear locks eyes with him. Its head drops low, ears are slightly back. He can see the chest rising and falling. He knows from every warning sign and every pamphlet that this is not a curious, "Oh look, a person," posture. This is a, "What are you and why are you in my path?" posture. His bear spray is on his hip, but he also has a very heavy, very expensive camera rig in his hands. For a half second, the stupid part of his brain thinks, "Do not drop the lens." Then the survival part kicks that thought in the face. He lets the whole rig crash into the gravel and goes straight for the spray. He starts talking loud, not screaming, but firm and strong. "Hey bear, I am leaving." His voice sounds small in that big valley, but to the bear it is everything about his intentions. The bear woofs, that deep chest noise that makes the ground feel like it is humming. Then it does the thing that almost ended him. It drops off the bank into the channel with him. Watching a grizzly come down a 2-meter dirt wall like it is stepping off a curb is something that never leaves you. Dirt rolls around its paws, claws dig in, and then it is down in the gully with him. The distance shrinks even more. Now they are on the same level, on the same narrow strip of rock. He starts backing up, keeping the spray pointed at the bear, moving slowly. The bear comes forward, not fast, but straight. The photographer can see its nose twitching, drawing in his scent, processing. He keeps talking. He starts to feel the wall of the channel behind him. If he keeps going backward, he will hit it. There will be nowhere else to go. The bear does a short rush, not a full charge. Just a couple of quick bounding steps that erase the last safe distance between them. Its head comes up, mouth slightly open. He thinks, this is it. He squeezes the trigger and sends a hard stream of spray into its face. The orange cloud blows out toward the bear, hits its eyes, nose, mouth. There is a half second where nothing happens, where the bear keeps coming out of pure momentum, pushing through the burning mist. He can see foam and drool flying from its mouth. Then the pain catches up. The bear veers to the side, shaking its head violently, sneezing and coughing. It turns away from him, runs down the channel a few steps, then scrambles back up the bank on the other side, crashing through the willows, making this awful coughing growl as it goes. In a few seconds, it is back in the brush and gone. He stands there in the channel, shaking, breathing hard. Spray mist drifted back on him too. His eyes sting, his throat burns, but he is alive. He climbs up onto the open gravel bar to get out of that blind hallway, retrieves his camera, and his hands are trembling so much he almost drops it again. Later, in the studio, he said the detail that still gives him shivers is the moment the bear dropped into the channel. That was the line. Up on the bank, at a distance, maybe it walks around. Down there with him, it became a very real question about whether the animal was going to decide to remove him from its world. He did not win a fight. He just got lucky enough and prepared enough to use the right tool at the right moment. If you are lying in bed listening to this, picture that. Walking in a little stony trench between willow bushes, focused on caribou, and then a wall of fur and muscle drops in with you, filling the space. That is how fast your day can go from cool light, good photos, to do I live another minute. Now let's talk about story number 7, and this one is about packing meat in the dark with a grizzly behind you, which is basically a bad dream a lot of mountain hunters have, except this guy actually lived it. He was one of those tough archery elk guys, spends his falls living in a tent, bugling back and forth with bulls, carrying heavy loads out of drainages that most people would not even walk into. He is in Wyoming, in a unit that is notorious for grizzly bears. Signs at the trailhead, claw marks on trees, tracks in the mud. He is not new to this. He hangs his food, keeps a clean camp, carries spray and a big revolver as backup. He knows the rule that if you shoot something in the evening, you have to decide whether you are going to get it out right away or leave it and hope a bear does not claim it overnight. He shoots a bull in the last hour of light, way back in some thick stuff. It is one of those big timbered ridges, with deadfall everywhere, where every step is over or under something. The bull goes down in a blowdown tangle. By the time he gets to it and starts quartering, the sun is gone, and the woods are that blue-black shade where your headlamp beam feels like a tiny tunnel of reality. He works fast, but you can only go so fast without cutting yourself. He hangs the quarters in a tree, bags the backstraps and tenderloins, and loads as much as he can onto his pack. He knows he will have to come back for the rest. The whole time he is cutting and lifting, he is listening for sticks snapping, for that low huff that means you are not alone. The smell of blood and guts is thick. There is that metallic tang in the cool air. Somewhere in the distance, a raven calls. He finally has to accept that it is time to go. It is late, he is tired, he is strapped into a pack that weighs more than most people do. He clicks off his headlamp for a second just to see how dark it really is. The answer is very dark. Stars overhead, some faint glow on the horizon, but inside the trees it is just shapes and shadows. He switches the lamp back on and starts down the ridge, slowly, carefully, every step a test on wet logs and loose rocks. After 10 minutes, he gets that feeling, that old primal sense that someone is behind you. It is not a sound, yet. It is tension. Every hair on his neck seems to lift. He stops and listens. The heavy beat of his heart in his ears fades. For a few seconds, there is only the creak of trees, maybe a breeze, maybe nothing. Then he hears it. A soft, deliberate footfall behind him. Then another. Not the random crack of windfall. Not a squirrel. Heavy steps, staying just outside the edge of his headlamp beam. He turns around, lamp pointed down the path he just walked. The light shines on trunks, brush, nothing obvious. Then he sees 2 points of green light floating just above the ground. Eyes. He watches as a shape steps into view. Big, dark, moving with that rolling gait. A grizzly bear is on his back trail, following the scent of meat and gut pile and human. They lock eyes. The bear keeps coming. not running, not rushing, just walking toward him like it is totally normal to be behind a man carrying 100 pounds of protein on his shoulders. He shouts, claps, tries to sound big and authoritative. "Hey bear, get out of here. Back off." His voice bounces between the trees. The bear stops for a second, head tilted, then takes a few more steps. The distance between them is not terrible yet, but every meter feels like the difference between a story and a news report. He realizes he has a real problem. He is on a steep slope in the dark, wearing a pack that makes fast movement almost impossible. If he ditches the pack, he gives up a huge amount of meat. If he does not ditch the pack and the bear decides to charge, he is not going to be able to move like he needs to. He makes the choice that keeps him alive. He swings the pack straps off and lets that whole load slam into the dirt. The sound is like dropping a sack of wet cement. The bear flinches, looks at the meat, then looks back at him. The world is suddenly about that pile on the ground and what everybody's going to do about it. He steps back slowly, keeping his headlamp on the bear, one hand on his spray, the other near the revolver. He talks, steady and loud. "You can have it, bear. I am leaving. Take it." His voice cracks a little on the last word, but he keeps going. The bear walks up to the pack, sniffs it, nudges it with its nose, then paws at it. Meat scent explodes into the air. The animal makes a low, rumbling sound that he feels in his chest more than hears. It glances at him one more time, as if to make sure he is really backing off, then drops its head toward the pack and starts tearing. He uses that moment to pull out his revolver and hold it low, just in case the bear suddenly decides to drop the free meal and go for dessert. But it does not. It is completely occupied with ripping open game bags and dragging hunks of meat away from the straps. He starts walking backward down the trail, headlamp pointed at the bear as long as he can. Eventually, the branches break up the beam and he cannot see it anymore. He keeps walking, faster now, looking back every few steps until the slope breaks and he is lowered down and out of that particular dark pocket of trees. When he finally gets back to the truck and sits in the driver's seat, he just lays his head back and laughs, this weird, half-hysterical laugh. He did almost everything right, and a bear still showed up to claim his hard work. He lost a load of meat and he could have lost a lot more. The next day, in daylight, he hikes back with friends and bear spray and discovers exactly 0 elk meat left. Just some bits of bone and hair and some big grizzly tracks in the mud. In the studio, he said giving up that pack hurt more than most injuries. That is hard-earned meat. But every time he pictures those green eyes in his headlamp beam and that big body walking right up his back trail, he knows that heavy pack would have been a stupid thing to cling to in front of a bear that decided it was time to change the ownership of that protein. Alone in the trees with a heavy load pulling on your shoulders and the sound of something bigger than you padding along just behind you, matching your steps, following the same narrow ribbon of dirt through the dark. Now let's talk about story number 8, and this one is about fishing. A lot of people think of grizzlies and brown bears as these mountain monsters, but a ton of the sketchiest encounters happen along rivers when everybody is there for the same reason, which is salmon. This guest was a hardcore fly fisherman who chased salmon and steelhead all over the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. He told me about the day he realized that on certain rivers, he is basically a hairless bear with a bad sense of smell, and the real bears do not always appreciate the competition. He is in coastal Alaska during the salmon run on one of those rivers that looks like a postcard. Clear green water, big boulders, overhanging trees, fish flashing in the current. There are bear tracks in the mud at every bend. Some of them are old, some of them are so fresh they are still filling with water. He is with one buddy working a long pool near a bend where the current slows down and stacks up fish. The plan is simple. One guy works the head of the pool, the other works the tail, and they switch after a while. They have bear spray, they talk loud, they keep their heads on a swivel. They know that in these places you do not own the river. You rent it from the bears and the lease can end fast. He is waist deep in cold water, casting, feeling that satisfying tug of the fly line as he swings streamers through the current. He is in that trance that fishermen get into, where it is just water and line and watching for that subtle pause that might mean a fish. At some point, he glances up toward the brushy bank at the head of the pool and freezes. A grizzly is stepping out of the alders right where his buddy had been fishing a little while ago. The bear is not looking at them yet. It is looking at the water, watching the salmon. Its fur is shaggy and wet along the legs, muzzle dark from who knows how many fish it has already eaten. He calls out to his buddy in a weird, tight voice, "Bear, upstream." The buddy turns, sees it, and they both immediately start talking to it, that loud human cadence that at least lets it know they are not fish or seals. "Hey, bear." "Yo, bear." "We are here." The bear looks up, sees two humans in its pool. It does not seem scared. It seems annoyed. It walks down the bank a few steps, watching them, then steps into the water. The river is up to its chest, then up to its belly as it moves along the shallower edge. It is working its way down the same side they are on, using the same gravel bar that they used to wade out. They start sidestepping toward their bank, trying to give it space. The problem is the pool is deep in the middle. They cannot just move straight laterally. They have to either go upriver toward the bear or downriver past it as it comes in. Time shrinks. Distance shrinks. The bear is now looking at them and at the fish, doing that bear math. The buddy makes it to the bank first, scrambling up onto the rocks, still talking loud, pulling his spray from his waders. Our fisherman is a little farther out. He hits a deeper pocket, stumbles, and in that split second, the river takes him waist deep to chest deep. His footing goes. He falls. The cold water slaps the breath out of him. His hat goes one way, his sunglasses another. The rod jerks in his hand. For a few heart-pounding seconds, he is flailing in the current, trying to keep his feet and not lose his gear, while upstream a grizzly is moving through the river with way more grace. He manages to get his boots under him, stands up, and looks up toward the bear. It is closer now. Too close. Maybe 15 meters. It has stopped moving fully forward, but it is still in the water, still eyeing the pool, still trying to decide what these two idiots are doing in its restaurant. He starts backing toward shore, his legs shaking, water pouring out of his waders. His buddy is on the bank with the spray in his hand, yelling, "Bear, get out of here." Go on. The bear watches them for a few more long seconds, nose twitching, eyes flicking from the humans to the thick schools of salmon moving like dark shadows in the pool. Finally, it makes its choice. It moves to the far side of the river, crossing the deepest channel with these huge, powerful kicks like a furry submarine, and climbs out on the opposite bank. There it starts fishing, lunging into the shallows, pinning fish with its paws, biting into them lazily, glancing across at the men now standing together on the near bank. They watch it for a while, breathing hard, heart still pounding. The bear occasionally looks over, as if to remind them that they are not kicked out of the valley entirely, but this particular table is taken. They decide to move far downstream and give it the entire pool. In the studio, he said he never forgot the look the bear gave him while he was floundering in the current. It was not, "I am going to eat you." It was, "What are you doing? You are terrible at this." That did not make it less dangerous. A drunk driver is not trying to hit you either, but that does not matter when your bodies intersect. If you are half asleep listening, imagine standing in clear cold water, focused on a beautiful pool and a perfect cast, and then feeling all that water turn into a stage where a giant bear steps out from the wings and walks right into your scene like it has all the right in the world, because it does. Now let's talk about story number 9, and this is one of those tent stories that make people never want to camp again if they are not already addicted to it. Night, nylon, and a grizzly just outside the thin fabric you are trusting to separate you from the world. This guest was a backcountry ranger who spent seasons patrolling in a national park that has a lot of grizzlies. His job was to check permits, clean up after sloppy campers, and generally keep people and bears from killing each other. One trip, he and another ranger are doing a multi-day loop through some remote valleys, checking camps and signs of bear activity. They are doing everything by the book. They hang their food properly, cook away from the tents, pack out trash, all of it. They have run these routes before. They have also dealt with problem bears before, the ones that have learned to associate people with food and start pushing that line. They make camp near a meadow with a little creek, tuck their tents near some trees for wind protection, and turn in after a long day of hiking. It is one of those perfectly still mountain nights. Stars are out. Air is cold enough that the first breath inside the sleeping bag feels amazing. They can hear the creek and some distant owls. They both have spray in the tent within arm's reach, like any smart person in that country. Sometime in the middle of the night, he wakes up for no clear reason. The creek is still there. The night sounds are still out there. But there is a different sound closer in, something quiet and heavy. He lies still, listening. The nylon of the tent wall moves slightly in and out with his breath. Then he hears it, a deep sniff right near his head, the kind of inhaling you do when you are trying to figure out what a smell is. The sound vibrates through the fabric, inches away from his ear. He freezes. His heart jumps into high gear. The rational part of his brain is saying, reach for the spray. The lizard part of his brain is saying, do not move. You are a rock. You are not here. The sniffing moves along the side of the tent, slow and deliberate. The fabric bulges slightly, where a big nose is pushing into it. He can imagine whiskers brushing the nylon. The bear is walking around the tent, mapping it. There is no food inside. They were not sloppy. But human sweat and sleeping bags and whatever faint trace of toothpaste or soap they have is still scent. He slowly, very slowly, slides his hand toward the corner of his bag where the spray is. Every tiny movement sounds deafening in his own ears. The bear sniffs near his feet, near his side, then near the top again. He can hear claws clicking on a rock, feel a faint vibration every time its weight shifts. From the other tent, he hears the soft sound of a zipper start and then stop. The other ranger is awake too. They are both lying there, each in their own little nylon envelope, with a big bear doing a slow lap between them. The bear bumps the side of his tent with its shoulder. The whole wall pushes in an inch or two, then pops back. The weight of that casual little bump tells him everything he needs to know about what would happen if that bear ever decided to lean on the tent for real. The air now smells like bear, that wild animal funk mixing with the cold night. After a long circle, the sniffing stops. The bear stands still for a bit. He can tell because the sound of its breathing is steady and close. Then there is a low huff, and the steps start moving away. Heavy pads on dirt, fading. A moment later, he hears something crashing out in the brush, then nothing but the creak again. They do not go back to sleep for a long time. They whisper to each other through the tent walls quietly, like kids at a sleepover, except the monster under the bed is real and weighs hundreds of kilograms. They keep their boots near the door in case they have to bail out in a hurry. Morning cannot come fast enough. At first light, they get out and walk the perimeter. The dirt around the tents is a mess of big footprints. You can see exactly where the bear stood, where it sniffed, where it turned. It came close enough that if the tent had been transparent, they could have looked straight into its eyes. Later in the studio, he said he was more scared in that tent than he had been in a lot of other high adrenaline situations on the job. In a fight, you move. In a fire, you act. In that fabric box at night, the best thing he could think to do was stay still and hope the bear did not decide to test the walls. If you are lying in bed right now, think about that. Translating from your house to a thin sheet of nylon with the same you inside, and then imagine feeling the wall of your room flex because something outside is testing it with a nose as big as your fist. Now let's talk about story number 10, and this one is about a dog, because dogs and grizzlies are a combination that turns bad so often it should be printed in giant letters on trailhead signs. The guest was a guy who loves both. He is a serious backcountry hiker and a dog person who takes his animals everywhere. He told me about the day he almost lost his life and his dog at the same time because he ignored that little voice that said, maybe leave the dog at home this time. He is hiking in the Rockies in fall. Leaves turning, air crisp, first dustings of snow higher up. His dog is a medium-sized, energetic, smart animal that loves to run ahead and then circle back. He has bear spray. He has a bell on the dog's collar. He has done this many times without anything weird happening. The trail winds up through open forest, crosses little creeks, then climbs into an area with thick willows and berry bushes. He knows that is grizzly food country. He can see patches where shrubs are flattened, piles of berry-filled scat. He keeps calling the dog back closer, making sure it does not disappear out of sight for too long. At some point, as the trail threads through a long stretch of willows, the dog charges ahead and vanishes into the brush. Bell jingling, collar tags clinking, he hears the dog bark. Once, twice, a sharp alarm bark, not the playful, look at this squirrel kind of sound. A deep, explosive woof that you only get from a big bear. The brush a little way ahead of him explodes. He hears crashing, the sound of something large spinning around. The dog comes flying back down the trail, ears flat, eyes wide, full-on panic mode. It sprints past him so fast it almost knocks him over. Behind the dog, the willows are still thrashing. The bell sound is replaced by heavy, fast footfalls. He has seen this exact pattern talked about by old-timers. Dog runs ahead, messes with a bear, then does the smart thing for a dog and the worst thing for the human, which is run back to the owner with the bear now in hot pursuit. He barely has time to process that thought. A grizzly bursts out of the brush onto the trail, hair puffed, mouth open, eyes locked on the moving target that is now him. The dog has already sprinted past, but the bear is amped on adrenaline and aggression. He is just one more upright mammal in its path. He had the spray on his hip, but in that moment, everything is chaos. The dog is darting behind him, barking wildly, then bolting ahead again, then circling back. The bear is bounding forward on the same trail, clearing meters with each stride. Every step makes the ground shake. He does the only thing he can think to do. He plants his feet, pulls the spray, and puts himself between the bear and the direction the dog ran. He raises the can, hands shaking, and yells as loud as he can, "Bear, get back! Back!" The bear closes to maybe 6 or 7 meters. At that distance, it looks less like an animal and more like the front end of a charging car. He squeezes the trigger and sends a wide plume of spray directly down the trail. The wind is on his side for once. The cloud rolls straight into the bear's face. It hits, and the effect is immediate. The bear slams on an invisible brake. It rears up, pawing the air, coughing and bawling. Its eyes squeeze shut. Strings of snot and foam fly from its nose. It swings its head side to side like it can shake the burn off. The dog keeps barking, which does not help anybody's nerves, but the bear is too busy dealing with its own face to refocus on anything else. It drops back to all fours, spins, and barrels off into the willows, breaking branches and shaking shrubs in a straight line away from the painful cloud. He stands there, arms still outstretched, fingers still locked down on the empty spray can. His lungs feel like they are on fire from the backdraft of the mist. His eyes tear up. The dog is now pressed against his leg, shaking, tail tucked so hard it is almost under its belly. He backs down the trail, talking to the dog, talking to himself, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. He does not run. Every instinct says run, but his brain knows that running might bring the bear back in predator mode, so they walk, fast, but still a walk. After a few minutes, the dog starts to regain a little composure, but every snapped twig makes it flinch. Every dark stump makes his own hard jump. Back in the studio, he said he never took that particular animal into grizzly country off-leash again. It was not the dog's fault. It was doing exactly what dogs do. It found something, barked at it, and came back to the one safe place it knows, which is the human. The problem is that in those mountains, sometimes the thing it finds is a half-ton of animal that can swap your place in the food chain in one bad decision. If you are lying there in a safe room listening, imagine that line of cause and effect. Happy dog running through leaves, jingle of a bell, one sharp bark, one deep woof, and then an entire wall of brown fur coming down the trail at you because your four-legged buddy did what nature wired it to do. That takes us to the end of story number 10. We have been through photographers and gravel channels, hunters with heavy packs and heavier shadows behind them, fishermen stumbling in cold rivers while bears clocked them, rangers listening to sniffing inches from their heads, and hikers watching their own dog drag an angry grizzly into their lap. When you are ready for part 3, we will pick up with story number 11 and go through 5 more times grizzly bears almost punched a ticket on people who later sat across the table and relived those seconds for all of us. Now let's talk about story number 11, and this one is out on a gravel bar with a bush pilot who thought the main danger in his life was weather and mountains, not a bear using his airplane like a scratching post and almost turning him into a snack. This guy flies hunters and fishermen into remote strips in Alaska, little plains, big country, no roads, just rivers and mountains and tundra. He has landed on every kind of sketchy surface you can imagine. Glacial strips, beach sand, ice. He respects the weather, he respects the terrain. He always knew there were bears around, but he had managed to go years without any real close call. Until one season when he had to pick up a couple of hunters from a gravel bar deep in the bush. He flies in late in the afternoon. The light is low and golden, the way it gets up there where the sun just kind of rolls along the horizon. The gravel bar is long and flat with river on both sides, spruce forest beyond. He makes a nice clean landing, rolls to a stop near the far end, and shuts the plane down. The hunters are nowhere in sight yet. They are supposed to hike back to the strip when they hear or see him, so he waits. The engine ticks as it cools. The only sounds are the river, some distant ravens, and wind. He steps out to stretch his legs, checks the tires, walks a little way down the strip to look for fresh washouts. It feels calm. He enjoys those minutes when he is not in the air and not yet wrangling gear and people. He notices some tracks in the sand, big clawed prints, fresh grizzly prints. They are not surprising, but something about the direction catches his eye. They are not just meandering across the bar. They are moving along it, like the bear was using this open runway as an easy path. He follows them a little bit, just out of curiosity, then decides that is enough. He turns back toward the plain, and that is when he sees the bear. It is at the opposite end of the gravel bar, down near the water, just stepping out from behind a little rise. Big, dark, thick. It has that presence that a mature bear has, like it owns the entire valley and is just passing through on inspection. They make eye contact. There is a long second where everything feels very still. Then the bear starts walking toward the airplane. He is used to seeing bears from the plane, from a distance, even sometimes walking near it. But this is different. This animal is closing the distance in a straight line, head low, very clearly interested in this new shiny thing parked on its runway. And he is on foot, out in the open, 30 or 40 meters from the plane. His bear spray is in the cockpit. His rifle is in the back of the plane. The only thing in his hand is a fuel dipstick. He feels about as armed as a paper bag. He knows he cannot outrun a bear on flat gravel. There is nowhere to climb, no trees on the bar, just scrub and stones. So he does the only thing he can think of. He walks back toward the plane, slow and steady, trying not to look like prey. He talks loud. "Hey, bear." "Easy, bear." Just passing through. The bear keeps coming. Its walk is relaxed but powerful. It is not bluff charging. It is not running. It is doing that steady, "I am checking this out" walk that bears do, except the thing it is checking out is his ride home. He reaches the plane, climbs back inside, and slams the door. The thin aluminum skin between him and the outside feels like nothing. He grabs the bear spray from the side pocket and sets it in his lap. The rifle is still behind him in the cargo area, but there is no safe way to shoot from the cockpit without blowing his own eardrums and windows out in close quarters. He decides the spray is going to be his first line. The bear walks right up to the nose of the plane and sniffs it. It puts one paw on the tire and pushes, making the whole aircraft rock. It stands up on its hind legs, plants both front paws on the cowling, and suddenly its head is level with the windshield. He is looking at bear eyes from about an arm length away with nothing between them but plexiglass. The bear huffs, leaving foggy prints of breath on the windshield. Then it starts licking and chewing at the front edge of the metal, maybe tasting old blood from bugs, maybe just exploring. Its claws scrape down the side panels, making this horrible metallic shriek. The plane rocks side to side as it leans on it, and every movement reminds him that if this animal decides to smash a window or peel open the door, there is not much he can do about it. He thinks about starting the engine to scare it off, but he knows from stories that sometimes the blast of prop wash can actually agitate bears more, and the last thing he needs is a panicked grizzly wrapped around his propeller. Plus, the prop is right where the bear is standing. If anything goes wrong, he could injure the bear and himself, and then no one is going anywhere. The bear drops back down to all fours and starts walking along the side of the fuselage, sniffing every seam, every bag strapped down, every scent. When it gets to the cabin door, it stands up again and leans its weight on the side of the plane. The skin bows inward. The window flexes. He can see individual hairs through the glass. He takes the spray can, cracks the side window just enough, and sticks the nozzle out. He waits until the bear's muzzle is close, then gives a short, hard burst right into its face. The bear jerks back, snorting. Its paws scrape down the side, leaving deep scratches. It shakes its head, pawing at its eyes, making that coughing groan that sprayed bears make. For a second, it looks offended, like, "What was that?" Then it turns and trots away down the gravel bar, still shaking its head, and splashes into the river, dunking its face to wash off the burn. He sits there shaking, can still feel the residual sting of the spray in his own nose from the backdraft in the cabin. His heart is beating so hard his chest hurts. A few minutes later, a pair of tiny specks appear far down the valley. The hunters. They arrive to find their pilot sitting in the plane, the skin of the aircraft deeply scratched and dented, a can of spray in his hand, and a story that will live in bush plane circles forever. He said what really hit him later was how close he came to losing the plane. If the bear had clawed a fuel line, bitten through a control cable, smashed a window, they might have been grounded for days, stuck in a valley with a bold bear that now associates the plane with a weird burning pain and possible food smells. If you are listening while you fall asleep, picture that. You land on a strip that feels like a runway on the moon, miles from the nearest road, and suddenly a big grizzly is standing against your cockpit like a hand pressed against a bathroom window, and your whole world is aluminum and hope. Now let's talk about story number 12, and this one is about being watched. It is not a charge story. It is a slow burn story. A guy on a solo bow hunt who realizes halfway through the day that he is not the only predator working that ridge. He is hunting elk in early fall, one of those days when the sky is so blue it looks fake, and the air is just cold enough that every breath feels clean. He hikes into a big basin, spruce trees marching up steep slopes, pockets of open grass where the sun hits. He has done this many times. He knows what elk sign looks like. Droppings, tracks, rubs on saplings. He also knows what bear sign looks like. Claw marks, digs, flipped rocks, old carcasses. He starts noticing both. Elk trails, fresh tracks, and here and there, big bear scat full of berries. It is normal enough in that country. Elk and bears share the same food and space. He is focused on the elk. He is cow calling, moving slow, working into the wind. At one point, he crosses a small patch of soft dirt on a game trail, a kind of natural little mud pad. He looks down out of habit and sees his own boot prints going forward. Beside them, crossing the trail, are fresh grizzly tracks. Large, clean edges, no debris blown into them yet. They look very new. He notes the direction. The bear came down the slope, crossed the trail, and went down into the timber. He keeps going. Hunters do that all the time. You see sign, you understand it, you keep moving. An hour later, he crosses another soft patch. He sees a set of tracks again. Same bear by the look of it, same size, same spacing, only this time, the prints are on top of his earlier boot prints. That means exactly one thing. The bear crossed that spot after he did. It is behind him on the ridge, not way behind. Reason enough that the edges of the tracks are still sharp. The hair on his neck stands up. He tries to shove the thought aside and tells himself bears use the same trails as everything else. It is just coincidence. He keeps moving, but now he is paying a lot more attention to the world behind him. He goes another stretch, maybe 40 minutes, creeping along, glassing, listening for elk. The woods are quiet. He crosses a little dry drainage full of duff and dust. His boots leave clear impressions. A little while later, he finds another patch of soft ground on the same route and looks down. Boot prints, then bear prints again, laid right over them, heading the same way. Now it is not a coincidence. Something is tailing him on the same path not very far back. The bear is not charging, it is not roaring, it is just shadowing him. He stops, turns around, and listens hard. The forest feels too still, no squirrels, no birds. Just the occasional creak of branches. He calls out, "Hey bear, I know you are there. Get out of here." His voice sounds small among the tree trunks. Nothing moves. He knows the worst thing he can do is pretend it is not happening. So he makes a plan. He moves to a little open knoll with better visibility, a small rise where he can see down the game trail he has been following. He takes his pack off, sets it down, keeps his bow with an arrow knocked in case an elk pops out, but his hand rests on the bear spray clipped to his chest. He sits and waits, eyes scanning the brush downslope. Minutes crawl. His mind plays tricks on him. Every dark stump looks like a bear. Every shadow between trees seems to breathe. Then he sees it, just for a second. A shape moving between the trunks, lower down. Not a full bear, just the line of a back, a flick of an ear, a flash of pale claws as a paw comes down. The bear stops. He can see it now, mostly behind a tree, but enough exposed that he knows what he is looking at. It is facing uphill in his direction. It is not standing. It is just there, quiet, watching. They sit like that for what feels like a very long time. The bear halfway hidden. The man on the ridge staring down, trying not to imagine it charging. He keeps talking, calm but loud. "Hey bear, I see you. Go on now. I am leaving." He hears, just barely, the soft crunch of it moving across the slope, not directly toward or away from him, but angling around. At that point, his elk hunt is done. He stands up, shoulders his pack, and starts heading down the mountain, keeping his head on a swivel, walking in the open as much as he can, avoiding thick draws. Every so often, he stops and listens, looking for movement below. Once or twice, he thinks he hears something, a branch snap, but he never gets a clear look again. When he gets back to the truck and checks the dust on the road near where he parked, he sees bear tracks there too. They cross the road, come down from the hillside above and head into the valley, the same size as the ones on the trail. It had moved along the same travel corridor he used, then peeled off before intersecting the human world too closely. In the studio, he said it was not a dramatic story to tell in terms of action, but it messed with his head more than some more obvious charges. The idea that this big animal had spent part of its day following him, checking him out from below, maybe from behind trees, gauging what he was, deciding whether he was prey, threat, or just some weird two-legged thing to monitor, that stuck with him. He said now, when he hikes alone in Grizzly country, he still looks ahead for tracks, but he really looks behind for tracks on top of tracks. It is not always the bear you see that will get you. Sometimes it is the one that has your footprints memorized. If you are relaxing in a safe place while you listen, think about that. You are walking a ridge, totally focused on elk, and behind you, passing over your same footprints, something else is walking the ridge too, somewhere between curious and hungry. Now let's talk about story number 13, and this one is a camp story, but not the tent bump kind. This is a full surround situation. A group of do-it-yourself elk hunters with horses in Grizzly country who wake up to find out their little island of gear and canvas is surrounded by brown fur and curiosity. These guys are a small crew of friends who pack deep into a wilderness area every fall with horses and mules. They set up a base camp miles from the nearest road with wall tents, a cook area, hide lines for the animals, the whole classic outfit. They have been doing it for years. They know there are grizzlies around. They bring bear-proof containers, hang anything smelly, do the dishes away from the tents. They think they have their system dialed. One year, the berry crop is weak in the lower country, and the bears are roaming higher looking for food. There have been reports from other camps of bears walking through at night, testing fences, chewing saddles, knocking down cook tarps. The men take it seriously, but they have also gotten used to the idea that most bears avoid them if they keep everything clean. They hunt hard the first couple of days. Long hikes, lots of glassing, not much elk activity yet. They leave camp before sunrise, come back after dark, tired and hungry. Every night they cook, eat, clean up, look around with headlamps for glowing eyes, and then crawl into sleeping bags. They hear occasional distant woofs and twig snaps, but nothing close enough to worry them. Until night 3. Sometime in the very early morning before dawn, the camp leader wakes up with this uneasy feeling. Not a sound, not yet. Just that sense that something is off. He lies there listening, buried in his sleeping bag, on a cot near the wall of the tent. Then he hears horses blowing, that sharp exhale through flared nostrils that horses make when they are nervous. They shuffle, hooves clink on rocks. There is the squeak of ropes as they toss their heads on the high line. He knows the difference between a horse shifting in its sleep and a horse that smells something it does not like. He reaches for a flashlight, quietly unzips the tent door, and peeks out. The world outside is cold, gray, and very still. The sky is just starting to pale. The shapes of the horses are dark lumps along the high line. Their heads are up, their ears are forward, all pointing in the same direction. He follows their gaze with the beam of his light and sees the shape of a bear at the edge of the meadow near the tree line. Then another, 3 grizzlies at least, one big, 2 smaller. They are moving slowly along the edge of camp, sniffing the air. He whispers an expletive under his breath and wakes the other guys up with a low voice. Everyone up. We have bears. There is that confused flurry of sleeping bags and whispering and fumbling for boots. They all get up, grab their headlamps, grab spray and the one big rifle they keep loaded in camp for exactly this kind of situation. When they step out of the tent, the light is a little better now. They can see more clearly. The 3 bears are not just passing by, they are circling. One is working its way along the far side of the horse line. Another is skirting the cook area. The biggest one is out in the open, doing a slow arc that seems to be taking stock of everything. They shout, "Hey bears, get out of here! Hup, hup!" Their voices sound small in the big meadow. The bears look over, ears turning, but they do not break into a run. They just adjust their path a bit, still circling. The horses are starting to panic now. One of them pulls hard enough that the high line jerks. Another starts dancing sideways, eyes wide. A spooked horse can injure itself badly or bolt and rip the entire setup down. They are trying to calm the animals and watch three predators at the same time. The big bear finally moves closer, maybe 50 meters out, and stands up on its hind legs. It is trying to catch a better scent on the wind, maybe get a clearer view. From the height of a horse, you can see quite a lot. From the height of a standing grizzly, you can see more. It stands there for a long moment, sniffing, silhouetted against the trees. One of the men fires a warning shot into a stump, a safe distance away. The report cracks through the valley. The bear drops back to all fours but does not bolt. It trots sideways, then sits down on its haunches, still watching. The other two keep working the edges, testing the perimeter, sniffing where a bit of grease from a pan might have splashed, where somebody spilled a drop of coffee. The hunters form a loose line near the tents, guns and spray in hand, moving as a group to try to push the bears away without splitting up. They shout more. One throws a rock that lands near a smaller bear. That one huffs and moves back a bit. It turns into a strange standoff, like a slow-motion dance. The bears want food. They can smell it everywhere. Meat scents from past meals, maybe a bit of blood left from a quarter they hung briefly, horse feed. The men want the bears to remember that camps mean trouble, not meals. Both sides move in little half circles for what feels like forever. Finally, maybe because the light has grown enough that the bears feel less comfortable, maybe because the warning shot and the shouting and the nervous horses make the whole scene less worth the risk, the big bear makes a decision. It turns and lopes toward the trees. The other two follow. In seconds, they melt into the forest, shadows among shadows. The hunters do not go back to sleep. They start a small fire, not for cooking, just for psychological comfort. They check every piece of their camp for missed crumbs and smells, double hang anything even remotely scented. One of them keeps watch until full daylight, spray in hand, walking little circles, listening. In the studio, the camp leader said the thing that hit him later was how coordinated it felt. It did not look like three random bears wandering. It felt like a family group working the perimeter of a known food source, testing for weaknesses. Camp to them is just an odd carcass full of smells they recognize from other camps. Once they get rewarded a couple times, they start to see every tent and tarp as the shell around calories. If you are in your own safe bed, think about unzipping your door and seeing three grizzlies casually inspecting your front yard, your car, your porch, and your dog, while you and your friends stand there in pajamas holding what little tools you have to keep the world in the shape you like. Now let's talk about story number 14, and this one is a more intimate version of the same thing. Just two people, one tree, and a grizzly who decides that the sound of climbing is an invitation to come closer, not a deterrent. This was from a guest who guided wilderness trips for clients who wanted that real, wild experience. No lodges, no roads, just backpacks, tarps, and miles. On this trip, he has one client, a guy from the city who lifts weights and runs marathons, but has never spent a week in true grizzly country. They are hiking along a remote river in early summer. The willows are green and thick, the water is high with snowmelt, and there are bear prints in the mud almost everywhere they look. The guide does what guides do. He keeps his tone relaxed but firm. Talk loud. Keep your eyes open. Do not wander off without saying something. They walk into a side valley one day to check out a waterfall and find a camping spot. It is beautiful. One of those places that looks like a painting. Cliff walls, spray turning into rainbows, mossy logs. They pick a flat spot a little ways back from the water between some mature trees. They are collecting wood when they hear a crash in the brush upstream. Not a branch falling, not a squirrel. Heavy steps, breaking things. The guide feels his stomach drop. He motions the client closer and they both stand still, listening. The noise gets louder. Then a grizzly bear appears on a game trail along the slope above them. It is moving with purpose, head low, sniffing, clearly on some path it travels often. It has not seen them yet. The wind is weird in this little canyon swirling. The guide whispers, "Do not run, move with me." They back up slowly toward a big spruce that has low branches and a sturdy trunk. He has climbed enough trees as a kid to know what will hold. The bear finally catches their scent and looks down. Its whole posture changes. It stops, stares, then starts angling down toward them. The guide has spray. He has used it before, but the slope is steep, the ground is tangled with roots, and the bear is big. If the spray does not work, there is nowhere to back up to except the waterfall itself. He decides on the spot that vertical is going to be their best friend. He tells the client, "Climb that tree. Now." high as you can. Use your legs, not just your arms. The client looks at the tree, looks at the bear, hesitates for maybe half a second, then his survival instincts kick in. He jumps for the lowest branch and hauls himself up like it is a pull-up bar in some fancy gym. The guide gives the tree a quick test grab to make sure it can take 2 adults, then flings himself up after the client. They scramble, scraping arms, bark in their faces, boots searching for footholds. The bear is moving faster now, coming down the slope straight toward their campsite. The client climbs higher and higher until he is maybe 4 or 5 body lengths above the ground, wrapped around a thick branch, breathing hard. The guide stops a little lower, straddling a fork, one arm hugging the trunk, the other holding the bear spray can. The bear walks into camp, noses their packs, sniffs where they had set down a pot. It can smell all the human scent, the food traces, the sweat. Then it looks up and sees them in the tree. For a second, nobody moves. The bear stands there sniffing. Then it walks over the base of the tree and stands up. From above, looking down, it is like watching a wall rise underneath you. 2 front paws slap against the trunk, claws digging into bark. The bear starts to climb. There is a myth that bears cannot climb. Black bears absolutely can. Grizzlies can too. Not as gracefully, but enough to do damage if the tree is not very big. This tree is big, but the bear gets a couple of meters up before sliding back down, leaving long gouges in the bark. The client is making these tiny panic noises, like a kettle about to boil over. The guide tells him in a calm voice that he does not feel. Do not look down. Hold on with your legs. You are good. The bear tries again. This time the guide leans out a little and hits it with a blast of spray right in the face. The angle is awkward and his heart is hammering, but he manages to paint the bear's muzzle in a solid stream. The reaction is immediate. The bear drops back to all fours, shaking its head, pawing at its eyes, snorting and coughing. It spins in circles under the tree, clearly miserable, making sounds that would be funny if they were not so close. It trots away a few steps, then comes back, sniffs the air again, snorts, and finally decides this particular tree is not worth the pain. It lopes off toward the river, crashes through the willows, and disappears around a bend. The 2 men stay in the tree for a long time after that. The client's legs are shaking so much the branches are rustling. The guide tells him jokes just to keep his mind from spiraling. Only when they have heard nothing for what feels like half an hour do they climb down, one at a time, very slowly. Back on the ground, the client hugs the tree, laughs and cries at the same time. The guide's hands are still trembling as he picks up the fallen spray can and checks how much is left. The bark at the base of the tree is shredded. The tent spot they picked looks much less peaceful now. They moved camp that evening, farther from that little side valley. In the studio, the guide said that was the closest he has come to feeling like a tree squirrel, clinging to bark while something big and hungry scratched at the trunk trying to get higher. If you were listening under blankets, picture that. You are 3 or 4 body heights up a trunk, bark under your nails, your thighs burning, and below you a grizzly is wrapping its arms around the same tree, trying to join you on your perch. Now let's talk about story number 15, the last one. And for this I want to bring it back to the idea that sometimes almost killed is not a single lunge or a bite. Sometimes it is a whole season of living with death 2 steps away. This one is about a biologist who spent months in a field camp studying grizzlies for science, and during one particular stretch he realized how thin the line was between observing and being added to the data as a statistic. He is part of a research team collaring and tracking grizzly bears in a big ecosystem. They dart bears from helicopters, fit them with collars, take measurements, and then follow their movements to understand how they use the landscape. It is important work. It also means spending a lot of time in exactly the same spots bears like best. Their main camp is a cluster of wall tents on a flat above a river. They have electric fences around the food tent, strict rules about where to cook and where to sleep, checklists written on laminated cards. For weeks, everything goes smoothly. They see bears at a distance, they track them on screens, they feel like they are living on the edge of something powerful but under control. Then they start working with one particular bear that changes the mood. A big male that keeps coming closer to camp than any of the others, circling at night, leaving tracks just outside the electric fence. They see his collar data showing weird zigzag patterns that look like he is investigating human scent more than he should. One evening, they are eating dinner in the cook tent when they hear the electric fence pop loudly. It is a sharp snapping sound, like a giant static shock. Then they hear something big move fast. They grab headlamps and step out. The sky is that deep blue of late dusk. The fence around the food area is sagging on one side. A bear, probably that sand-collared male, has pushed against it, taken a hit from the wires and bolted. They see his tracks in the dust where he wheeled and ran. There is a faint smell of burned hair. The team is rattled. An electric fence is supposed to be a strong psychological barrier. Once a bear learns it can test or bypass it, the whole safety plan becomes a lot shakier. They increase their vigilance. They set up extra tripwires with noisemakers around camp. They take turns on night watch, one person staying awake in a central tent with a radio and a spotlight. The biologist pulls a shift not long after. It is the middle of a very dark night. The only light is a bit of glow from the moon and the faint illumination of instruments inside his tent. He is sitting there fighting sleep, listening to the background noise of the camp. Snoring from one tent, the occasional stamping of a horse in the distance, the hiss of the river. Then he hears something soft, almost like someone slowly dragging a hand through tall grass. He switches off his little lamp and listens harder. The sound comes again. A soft, steady padding moving along the perimeter of camp. He reaches for the spotlight and the spray that lies next to it. He steps to the tent flap, easing it open, and peers out. At first he sees nothing, just the pale shapes of tents, the faint glint of the fence wires, the dark mass of forest beyond. Then, at the very edge of the fence, he sees a darker shadow moving, a big shape, low to the ground, pulling in air with heavy breaths. The bear is walking just outside the fence, nose down, sniffing every post, every wire. It stops at a corner where a bit of food smell might have drifted out earlier. It stands up, pressing its nose toward the wire, almost touching it but not quite. You can feel its intelligence in the way it moves. It remembers the shock from the last time. It is exploring how far it can push. He switches on the spotlight and shines it directly at the bear. The beam cuts through the dark, lighting up fur, eyes reflecting back, clouds of breath in the cold air. The bear blinks, squints, lifts its head higher. It does not bolt. It just squints at the light like a person annoyed by someone opening curtains too fast. He shouts. His voice feels thin out there. The bear finally drops back to all fours and moves a little farther along the fence. It walks the entire perimeter like a jogger on a track, coming within meters of every sleeping human in camp, separated only by some wire and some faith in engineering. At one corner, it pauses again, sniffing, and then it does something that chills him. It sits down. Just sits, like a dog at a park bench, and stares into camp. It sits there for long minutes, nose working, ears swiveling, watching the movements, listening to the subtle human sounds. He knows it cannot see much beyond the bright wash of the spotlight because the light is in its eyes. But it can hear, it can smell. It is taking notes in whatever way bears take notes. Finally, maybe bored, maybe satisfied that there is no easy food inside the magic string, it stands, shakes itself, and ambles off into the trees. The sound of its steps fades. The night seems too quiet afterward. Over the next week, they see that same bear again and again on the tracking screen and in person. It never quite comes back through the fence, but it keeps threading its movements close. They dart it from the helicopter once more to check on its health and find that it is in prime condition. No wounds, no obvious starvation. It is curious, not desperate. The biologist told me that those days felt like living on the front line of some Cold War. You know the other side has the ability to take you out. You are relying on deterrence and a thin layer of technology. Most nights, nothing happens. Some nights, the wires pop and a big shadow circles. He said that after that season, he loved bears more, not less. He respected how smart they were, how adaptable, how individual their personalities could be. But he also carried this deep knowledge that a little bit of wire and some protocol does not change the fundamental math of living among animals that powerful. You are always one broken fence, one forgotten cooler, one bad habit away from a serious incident. Sitting here, safe, he could laugh about some of the details. The singed hair, the way the bear sat like a person watching television, the way the young interns would freeze when they heard the fence snap. But the weight of those nights is still in his voice. He says he still wakes up sometimes thinking he hears soft steps outside a nylon wall, even in a house in a city. If you are falling asleep to all of this, Think about the pattern across these 15 stories. It is bush pilots in aluminum birds, bow hunters in dark timber, runners on mountain trails, fishermen in cold rivers, campers in nylon and canvas, biologists with clipboards and collars. Different people, different jobs, same reality. When you step into grizzly country, you are stepping into a place where you are not the boss. Almost killed does not have to mean teeth in your neck, although sometimes it gets that close. Sometimes it is inches from a cockpit window, or a charge that stops just outside the spray cloud, or a set of tracks laid neatly on top of your own, or a bear just watching your camp in the dark deciding whether tonight is the night to test the fence a little harder. The people who told these stories across the table had that same look when they got to the closest part. Their eyes go distant for a second, like they are back on that trail or in that tent, smelling fur and wet dirt and their own fear. They lived through something that stripped away all the little daily worries and left just one question in their head for a few seconds. Am I going to stay alive? Most of them did everything mostly right. They carried spray, they made noise, they paid attention. And still, grizzlies almost erased them. That is what makes these animals so intense. They are not villains. They are just very, very good at being what they are. So if you are tucked in somewhere far from any bear right now, you can let your brain play with these images for a bit, then let them drift off. Gravel bars and collars and spruce trees, footfalls and dust and sniffing at nylon. Somewhere out there, in real mountains and valleys, grizzlies are moving through the night, following scent trails and river bends, completely unaware that a bunch of humans are listening to stories about the times they almost turned someone into a statistic. You get the benefit of the adrenaline without the tooth marks. They got the scars and the lessons. And the next time you see a sign at a trailhead with a big clawed track on it and a list of rules, maybe you remember a couple of these almost and treat those suggestions like what they really are, which is pieces of other people's near misses, written down so you do not have to learn them the hard way with a bear's breath on your face.